The book that he gave me was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And he said, you read this, next time when we meet, we want to talk about this and what you're going to do to implement this. I read the book and I went back, I said, I don't have the guts to do any of this. You're asking me to have cutthroat and I can't do that. He said, do you want to make it or not? I was sitting on the board for a Women's Center of Women in New York, and I did quite a few coaching sessions for the employees. One of them was horrible. It was a sexual harassment case, and it was bad. And we got through that one.
Did you ever have any of that in your own life in terms of?
Oh my God! When I was young, yeah. Okay. I was chasing around the office in the military when I was first got in. But you know what? You can't. 1972, I graduated. I did not have any experience, no mentor, no nothing. So I got into office. I was wearing miniskirt, long black hair, like Asian long black hair, no makeup, with a band and cutesy wootsy, going in. I mean, right? I'm joking about it. I'm laughing about it, but it did not make any excuses for those men trying to touch me, kiss me, hug me, chasing me around the office, trying to look underneath my skirts, like clean under tables and stuff. But at the end of the day, I laugh at it, and I thought, what do you expect? But no excuses. But in 1972, during that period of time, we don't have the Me Too or all this thinking process. So then after that, I started wearing pantsuits.
Hi, I'm Sharon Landon, and welcome to my show, Old Asian Lady. Today, I have a returning guest, Nancy Chen Baldwin. And thank you, Nancy, for coming again to my show.
Thank you for having me. It's always such a pleasure to be here.
Nancy is a CEO of her own professional coaching company. She has also been in the aerospace industry for over 40 years. So that's amazing in itself. But I wanted to talk this time about your career as a woman, as well as being an Asian woman. How did you? Was aerospace industry something that you studied for, or that you got a degree in?
No, not really.
You just happen to slip into aerospace. That's a hard thing.
Well, that's just kind of maybe go just one little step back a little bit. When I was in college, of course, when I graduated, I applied for law school. So I was going to be an attorney. Okay. And I was accepted by the King's Law School, which is the first law school in University of California in Davis. So I would have been a first graduate.
Wow.
But unfortunately, at the time, I was married to my first husband, and you kind of get tired of being a poor student, so we want to move forward, And so I said, well, working for the United Nations, with the international laws and all that stuff can wait, and I'll just go back later, so I'm going to go get a job. And at the time, the United States government, civil service, going out to the college across the country to recruit the top 10% of the graduates, because it was their attempt to modernize their leadership structure, and so they are recruiting for new leadership. So they came to the college, and I said, okay, they're going to pay me $10,000 US in 1972 was a lot of money.
A month?
A year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I forgot that was that. Okay, yeah, that's a lot of money.
$10,000 a year in 1972 was a lot of money. So I said, okay, my law school, my law affair can be, let's come later. So I took the job without realizing what really was, because what they told me I would do was I will be the financial analyst, because I do have business background, economics and.
You're super good in math.
I graduated as an international relations focused on economics and oriental languages. And of course, my minor was politics, political science. So it's like, okay, you want me to be a financial analyst? Okay, I'll come in. And I was assigned to a two-star general staff office. But it's an Air Force base. It's a military air base. So the aerospace industry that I was engaged in, it was for military airplanes, not for civilian airplanes. So I got in there as a financial analyst. We analyzed all the resources that we need, the budget for the year and all that good stuff, and make recommendations in terms of how much money we're going to have to make and how much money we're going to ask for, because government don't make any profit. We have to break even. So it's a balance to how you do that. So that's kind of how I got involved. And I was the first of the first, of course. I was the first Asian female be hired to the so-called presidential intern program, which in 3 years they promised us that we'll become a journeyman and we'll become a manager.
Oh, how did somebody get into that program? It's because your grades, or?
Well, at that time I was very lucky because they came to recruit. I mean, generally in the civil service, you gotta go and you're gonna have to take a
exams,
test, an exam, all right. But for us, because that was a special program at the time, they are looking for top graduating class.
Okay, so you were top 10.
Our grade itself was good enough to prove that we are good. And they're going to train us, presidential intern program training. So that's how I got involved with the Air Force. And of course, it's military airplanes. So at the time I was engaged, in doing analysis for airplane like F-11, F-111, A-10s, they're all fighter airplanes. They are bombers, they are fighter airplanes and stuff. The base was more doing the maintenance, because the airplane comes in, they have to maintain it, they have to flight test it, and they fly out to the bases and all that stuff. So most of the people on base were civilians, and we have like 10,000 employees. So all the money came in was all for that. So being a financial analyst was a good thing to do. But at the same time, I learned quite a bit about military airplanes and
fighter airplanes.
Oh, fighter airplanes and stuff, constructions and all that stuff. And of course, you was learn a lot about office politics. In order for you to get promoted to the next rank, you gotta know who. You gotta know who's gonna sponsor you. So I learned early stage in 1972, when I graduated 22, 23 years old, I learned about politics, how you play that. And as a result of being the first of the first, I was always the first. I was the only one in a boardroom when I do the presentation.
Okay, so first was first Asian, first female.
Right.
That's a lot to live up to.
And a foreign born.
Okay. Oh, right.
English is a second language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it was kind of tough, but again, you use your smart and you can't get bitter about it. People are always going to say, well, the reason you got promoted was because you're Asian, you're women, So there's always people going to say, oh, well, the reason why you are here is because of affirmative action. It's never like you did a good job and you really qualified, you were excellent employee, but it's always this thing about, why you got in, a judgment. So it was pretty tough to navigate. And then the other thing was that, they felt that because I was an Asian female in California, as you know, where we are in Sacramento airspace, we have a lot of Asian populations and votes and stuff. And then the capital was there, right? And so at the time, March Fong Yu was the first Asian female Secretary of State.
Oh,
yeah.
Another first. Wow.
Right, and so they felt that I was the right person to represent the base.
Oh.
My face was the face of the base to connect with the community and with the government in California, because the money that comes into the base all depends on how good your politicians and your congressmen and senators work in Washington, D.C. and lobbying for you, So a lot of employment were based on the power, of course. And so I learned that pretty quickly. And then I went through the whole thing. So then I worked for military, 2 stars, military people. Actually, the military guys were much more understanding than the civilian guys, actually.
Interesting. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think because of their experiences, they've been around the world, they fight in a war, or they stationed in different countries and they got engaged with a different type of diversified people.
Right. Yeah.
And a civilian, mostly, or Caucasians, they probably don't, have that kind of experience. So I was lucky, with the exception, I think I have to mention this, it's kind of interesting, is that I had a Chinese general, 2-star, as my boss.
Wow.
So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this Chinese general, it's great, I'm a mentor, and going to help me. Not at all. He was so critical of me, and he spoke Chinese. He spoke English with a much, much, much heavier accent than I did, right? But yet, when I went to the boardroom to brief the staff about the resources requirement, the budget, and all that stuff, he will pick on my English every single time before I even have a chance to talk about what I was presenting.
Wow.
And that was very hurtful. So for a year, I was, so that just kind of that's the reason why I didn't want to go back my route. Look at this man. He's a man on my route, but yet he can't even, help me as his fellow, citizens and stuff. So that was the one experience that was pretty bitter, but it was funny, it was funny.
Why did you feel that he behaved in the way that he did compared to the other Western generals?
Well, I can look at the very positive way of saying, well, he wants me to be better. He's criticizing me, wants me to be better and learn faster to be better. But of course, the other side of the coin was he felt embarrassed by me. How could my staff member in such a high position coming in here cannot speak perfect English and cannot carry herself, the way that I expect her to, right? So, you never know.
Kind of like a double standard, I would have to say.
Yeah, it was.
I think so.
And of course, the negative result of that was I was reassigned to another position. But the good news was I was promoted as a result of it to make it up for what they did, right? Because they knew that what they did was wrong because my analysis was perfect. I was doing a really good work. And so they promote me to the next rank. And so the bad news is that. But the good news was the next rank, I get to be in a public relations office where I was much more active in the community. So I was engaged in the community more. But at the same time, I was able to learn more about the base, the whole relations with Washington, D.C., and the whole relation with the state government, the whole relationship with the community. Because at the time, the government, always trying to save money. So they always look at how many number of bases that they have in a country, and they would decide which one's going to close. So, of course, our base was right in the in the middle of that battle. So I learned about that whole bitterness of a politic. So the good news was that, and then the other good news was that I was able to I don't know how, but the new boss came in, and the new boss was a Mormon general. And some reason he took liking of me, and I was writing pretty soon because of public relations, I was writing his public releases, dealing with the media for him. And
so wait a minute, this general was a woman?
No, he was a Mormon.
Oh, a Mormon. Okay, I thought you said
Utah.
woman.
Okay.
Mormon.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. I had no idea or thought that Mormons, I don't know why.
Yeah, and he
would be
was
in the military.
taking a liking of me, and he just kind of took me under his wing, and I wrote all his press releases, dealing with the news media, with the communities and stuff. But at that time he said, no, you can't do this. I won't be here forever, so you have to get into technical management.
Oh.
So I said, but I'm not an engineer. He said, what minute does it be? engineer does not make good managers. So you're perfect for it. So then the good news was because of that, and he set me up to lead a group of engineers on very high-speed physics, was very high-speed circuitry, which is the newest technology at the time. And my job was to lead the group of engineers to go and talk to all the aerospace company to help them, to get them to support our technology development, and set up the base as a high-tech center, move all the airplane out and set it up as a chip designer and a high-tech center. And we thought that was a way to protect the base. Right.
So did you have to learn all about that? You said you're not engineering. So you had to go back to school?
No. The good news was my mathematical background. My mathematical background and my economics background, you deal with numbers and diagrams and stuff. And my engineer was great. And I think I learned from there too. Again, you love deeply, you give freely. And I was always the people's manager. I was always the people's bosses. And so I built a team, and my engineers were so protective. And then so anything I don't understand, they said, I always told them I'm a visual guy. So they always sit down and bring a piece of paper and they will draw the picture and they will teach me. They taught me how to connect A to C to current to D and all that. So I learned a lot of engineering, that way, on site. So that I could ask intelligent questions, And of course, dealing with industry is so male dominated.
Yes.
So being a female team leader going into the big company like that, talk about discrimination, and they would never talk to me. I mean, in the beginning, they wouldn't talk to me. They would talk to one of my engineering lead. And the good thing about my engineering lead was say, excuse me, I'm not the boss. My program manager is Nancy. So, so I was very, very fortunate to have a group of people who were very supportive of me, but because I'm known to be the people's boss,
Yeah, I think that makes such a huge difference. People that have companies that care for their employees tend to be more successful in the long run rather than just focusing on numbers and, stuff like that. So, so you were just talking about, the discrimination because you're a woman. Did it go even further into, because you were an Asian? Did that have a different aspect of discrimination for you?
I think both of them play into being a female and being an Asian and being a
double
foreign-born.
whammy.
It's a triple whammy, actually. It was triple whammy. And I think that's thing saved me was because of my grandmother's teaching. And I have to keep on coming back. And that's where her influence come in, is to love deeply, give freely, be whoever you want, and don't let anybody to sway you and use your smart. Don't get bitter. That she always told me, don't get angry, don't get bitter, because that's not going to get you anywhere. You just feed it to them, so you got to be smart about it. And so that was always in my mind to keep me up there. So when my engineer says, excuse me, I can't talk to you, you have to talk to my boss, the program manager, there she is, And I think that taught them quite a bit too, to the company, taught them quite a bit to learn how to respect, And I wasn't the most brilliant person in the world, but I think I was smart enough, and I think that was a gift that was given to me, and I'm very grateful for the gift. And then from there, so the base actually was set up as a high-tech center for about 2 years. But of course, they never stopped. The politicians never stopped. So then during that time, there's a brand new airplane called F-22, the ATF, Advanced Tactical Fighter, was the most sophisticated airplane I ever developed at the time. And that was because the Russians was one of the airplanes got shut down in China, and they discovered the Russian was way, way ahead of us, the United States, with their technology. So then, the government and industry was really in a hurry, wants to go and try to figure out how to outdo the Russians. And so I was assigned to be the deputy program manager next to my colonel. And Colonel Nelson was a very good friend, a very good friend. He loves women. But anyway, we won't go there. But, anyway. So, but I was smart enough. I always cover him. I always do good thing to be loyal to my boss. So he assigned me to be his deputy program manager for F-22, representing Sacramento base in Ohio. That's where the selection was going to be done. And it's $1 trillion program. So all the big companies all want to compete.
Yeah, they have to bid for jobs, yeah.
And that's where I met my second husband. He was a military lieutenant, and we jointly helped to develop the requirement for the airplane in terms of what the airplane wants to do, how high they should be fly, whether or not they should be invisible or not, and then we do the cost trade analysis of performance versus affordability and all. So we did all that together. That's how I met him, and we got together. So I had a lot of experience on advanced technology. As a result of that, we put in all the most modern technology in the airplane, stuff it, invisible, capabilities and all that. And so I was assigned to Dayton, Ohio, in a program office to do the source selection. So we had to deal with all these first tier 7 company and a second tier and third tier, and everybody all compete for because it's multi-trillion dollars.
Yeah.
And so
it's a complicated process, right, to bid for jobs with the military.
Yes. And it's also very, very political. Again, it's politics and how much the company has the resources to go lobby, right? So it's all lobbying activities and stuff. So the technical merit is important, but it's not the most important, so I learned that.
Well, I mean, were you responsible for screening those bids and proposals?
Yes, we were part of that source selection, we were part of that source selection team, and I actually spent a year and a half in Dayton, Ohio, doing that source selection. But we divided up, different part because it's such a complex system. So, we do our piece of it and everybody do a piece and then we put together. And I developed quite a lot of good friendship with those military and civilian people in Dayton, Ohio,
But once you decided that there was a company that was viable you guys make a decision, but were you guys the end of the line decision, or did the guys go above you because you're talking about a lot of politics? I mean, stuff that unfortunately I guess you had to play sort of, but there was still.
You're right. You're exactly right, and that wasn't the end of it. So when you develop a very sophisticated airplane like that, it takes 20 years or more from the time you actually put down a piece of paper and say, what do I want an airplane to do? What kind of capability do you want that airplane to have, to the time actually manufacture and roll out to fly in the sky? It's about more than 20 years cycle.
A lot of money to be made during that time.
Of course, absolutely. And then there's a support. Afterwards, other airplanes roll out, we're gonna maintain it with parts and repair and all that stuff. So it's a big, huge business, And so my second husband, we were in the beginning, and then we got to the second and the third phase, and then after that, I retired after the airplane, flew in the sky.
Okay.
And actually, my husband was supposed to be one of the pilots, test pilots, but unfortunately, his eye couldn't make it. So anyway, that's a different story.
No, it kind of reminds me of my brother who wanted to go to the Naval Academy when we used to live in Maryland, and he was not able to go because of his eyes.
So different story. So we did that, and then I think that was a time that my second husband decided he was want to marry me, And so I say I don't marry a military man because I don't want to be an officer's wife. I have a lot of friends who are officers' wives, and when you're fighter pilots, you never know. Just like policemen, you never know. They walk out the door whether or not they're gonna come home alive, right? So I said I don't want to do that. So he quit. So he decided to become a civilian work for IBM, and then he found a job in New York City. And that's how we relocated to New York. And of course, at the time, there's no military bases, and I was on a ride. I was like become the division chief of and then I went to Los Angeles and become the satellite system division chief. And I was on a ride. But then he decided he wanted to move to New York, and then so we couldn't. I couldn't find a military space, so I had to leave the government. And and Grumman at the time was one of the competitors for this very sophisticated airplane, and they lost, of course. Not because they don't have the merit. I feel like they had the best technical solution, but the politics took place, so they gave it to Lockheed Martin instead. So that was that, and we were really disappointed, but the decision is made by them. So to answer your question earlier, is like that.
Yeah.
So when we left the military, so Grumman at the time, and we had some friend in D.C. I mean in Dayton, Ohio, I guess, and they all knew like we're going to get married, we're going to move to New York. So, and they were so good to me. So they talked to Grumman about this new program with the Chinese Air Force. FA, which is a different version of the MAC-22 from the Russian airplane. They want to put a fire control system to make the airplane more powerful with shooting their guns and fly faster and da-da-da-da. But really what they wanted to do is to learn our new technology. So they had a contract with Grumman. And they want to, so Grumman decided to hire me because of my Chinese background and my so-called language, cultural background. So they hire me as a program manager for that, and that's how I joined the civil, the public.
Wow, so here we have is a Russian plane that the U.S. found out that the technology was way higher than what we had, and then now there was a Chinese company that had also higher technology, or they were trying
our technology.
Okay,
yeah.
So what was the difference then? Did you feel that working for the military company as to a civilian or private company? Were there any differences?
Yes, it was a big difference. In the military, we are not into making profit. Right? So we have a budget, we generate a budget, and we go, and so cost, performance, and schedule are always the most important criteria for success. So we are not making profit. So the pressure on making profit is not so much. And then the other thing is that I have, over the years, I spent almost 17 years in the military, working for the military. And, I had it's my family, I got all the support from my generals, I was on a rise, civil service ranking, and I was going to be a SES, and all that. So it was a comfortable position, my family. So I had to leave my family. And going into the private is like their main goal is profit making. So you got to make money. So they give you a target of how much is your annual revenue that you got to make, right? And so the politics is much worse because you see, everybody wants to be the president or vice president, right? So profit margin and then promotion opportunity. So that creates such I think it's pretty toxic, kind of environment. But of course, I didn't learn all that because I'm a Taiwanese. I was born and raised here, so all that was brand new. So I had to jump in, and learn all that.
What was a lesson that you learned that really made you?
Okay, so the best thing I can give you, the funny thing was, I was hired as a program manager for this Chinese airplane. It was snowstorming, and I got in there. And I went into my office where I was supposed to be. They put me in the back of the table, a desk in the back, thinking I'm a new engineer.
Right.
Okay. And then one of my, the VP that hired me decided to stop by to see how I was settling in. And he said, Vern said, why are you sitting back there? I said, I don't know. And so he went, and everybody was shocked that their new boss is the woman Asian. And so, of course, they rattle around and trying to set up the office for me, friends and stuff like that. A month later, my engineer manager came in and he says, well, Tiska was his name. He says, well, I'm here representing the staff to let you know that we don't understand why you're here. You are not a trained engineer. What do you know anything about engineering? And why are you here? We have a good succession program. We have people lined up wanting this position for years and years and years. And you came from outside and just took over. What happened?
Yeah.
And so it was a very hostile environment. But I'll tell you, again, it's this learning from my grandmother, So I basically gave him 3 options. One, you get out of my program, I'll get you reassigned. Two is you quit altogether, leave the company. Or third, you learn how to work with me. So he stayed, and everybody stayed. And we had a wonderful time until Tiananmen Square when the program was canceled because the United States government.
Oh.
Yeah, Tiananmen
during
Square
that
with
time.
China, yeah.
Oh,
so we
gosh.
canceled our program, and then I moved to all the Navy airplanes, the E-2s, all the Navy airplanes. Before it was all the Air Force airplane I would deal with. Now I'm doing all the Navy airplanes, And
so if I go and name off like these different, names of airplanes, you probably know all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then it was the unmanned system, Global Hawk, all the remote, all the unmanned system. And then I did some consulting for the ship system because one of my very good mentors got reassigned as the president, general manager of ship system in Mississippi. So I went down there for a few months to help him out to set up an organization down there and stuff. So that's how I learned the skill of being a consultant, organizational development, using my master's degree in social work, which I was studying on organizational development, and other than the clinical services, where I was a clinician. But
right, that's quite a different profession than aerospace. So you got into clinical because I think we talked about last time you were like very involved in social issues.
Well, okay, so the last time we talked a little bit about how that was for me to being traumatized, as a traumatized child when I was very young, and how I got to where I was. So, when you're traumatized at a young age, it never goes away unless you work on it. And I never really worked away. I was suppressing and somewhat frozen, as part of a defense mechanism. But then after I had my children, it was like those ugly hair keep on coming out, right? It reminds me I had children, and what happened to me. And so the whole trauma, keep on wanting to come out. And it was, after my divorce, the first divorce, and the second one, I was, kind of living with a clinical psychologist, and my boss keep on wanting me to send me to an MBA because that's part of my career development thing. And so I went at night school, I had a full-time job. I went to night school, and I was studying for an MBA degree. And then after 1 year into it, I'm just saying, no, I can't do this. I've done it before, been there, done it before. And then there's master social work. They have some of the parallel curriculums.
What is the parallel?
Like the organizational development, to understand the psychology of an organization.
Okay.
How do you go about managing your employees, and how do you go and be a good boss and, being a people's people. So that's how I switched. But I had to focus on calling the organizational development. Otherwise, I would not get my tuition reimbursed.
So you switched from having an MBA to an
MSW.
Okay, and it's the same.
Well, the basic. They have the basic curriculum, and then you move out to the specialty.
Okay.
I did get a certificate, graduate certificate for business administration. I just did not get a degree, but I did get a certificate because I completed all the requirements. I just did not go to the next step to get the degree. And so I did get a certificate for that, and then I went in and got a degree in MSW.
Okay.
And so it was like that, and I decided to switch at the time. And that was before I got married, the second time in my children. But it was that point that I started to the ugly head, keep on coming out. And that's why I decided to do my clinical field work in Napa State Hospital in California, mental state hospital, working with children.
Okay.
And it took me 3 years because I worked full-time, so I had to do it on weekends, in Napa State Hospital, and learn quite a bit about children and ego developments and, child development. And then it just went on, and I was just suppressing until my children were born and my son was 5 years old. And that was when I really kind of really got going, broke out. So, I mean, so that was good news. That I started to feel it, and.
But being in the clinical field, did that help you in any way?
Yes, I did. So in addition to working in Napa State Hospital with the children, my boys, I have 7 boys I work with for 2.5 years, part-time.
Okay.
And they were at age of, 10 to 14 years old. And then after that, I had to leave, and then I work in a family services agency also as a volunteer, supervised by, because I had to get hours to get to take a test to be licensed. And so I went there and did clinical, at night and in the evening.
And what do you feel that, because this was before you went into working with the military?
No, it's part of
the whole thing.
Yeah, that's when I did that, I was working for the military. Yeah, that's part of that.
Okay.
And it was not until I started working for the private company like Grumman or Northrop
You were in New York.
That's when I started to, the trauma starting to come out bigger and bigger and bigger, and when my children was, around. And I think that was the time that I think I wrote in my book that, I just broke down one day and started to cry in the middle of the night, and I hear my grandmother says, just write, put it down, just write. Put your tears on paper. Okay. And that's when I started to do my journal and set the foundation for the book. Yeah.
So how long more did you stay with the so
I worked for Grumman, and until 1999, a lot of mergers took place. So there were 7 giant, and they narrowed down to 5, and then narrowed down to 3. And Lockheed Martin came and bought out. Northrop came to buy out Grumman, and so there was a merger between Grumman and Northrop, right? And so when you do an East Coast merger, it was kind of culturally different. Oh my God, talk about cultural difference between Western and East Coast.
Totally.
The East Coast and West Coast, the cultural difference. So I was the East Coast division.
Even though you had lived in California, so you kind of knew
Yes. Yeah. So I was a director, for the East Coast. So I had to merge the East Coast organizations. And then 2 years later, they want to merge with the West Coast. So now I had employees on both sides,
coasts.
right? Both coasts. And they all competing against each other because when you start to merge, then you're going to lose people. You lay off people. Right? So you have to decide who stays and who goes.
Yeah.
And so then I had to compete for my position to be the director of this merge organization. And of course, I won out, and then people were saying, well, the reason why you got it is because you're a woman.
Oh, not that
acting.
Again.
Here we go again.
Oh, my gosh.
And so that kind of went on for a while, but I won. And so I tried to merge the two. And again, I'm known to be the people's boss.
Yeah.
But the other part is what's interesting is that the corporate America in that way, in the company, especially you're dealing with the defense industry, really, we sell airplane to defense industry, is that most of the big bosses were all retired military people. Because they think that they have influence in Washington, D.C., they have influence in the military forces, so they can go and get contract, right? I mean, that's the thing, right?
That could be another conversation.
Right. And so as a result of it, I had bosses that were retired 3-stars, and of course, what they try to do is they try to get rid of all their civilian employees and trying to bring in their military people that used to work for them.
Yeah.
And I had that case. But I think what I learned enough, again, is the principle and courage, So I confronted my boss. I said, I'm sorry, I understand. And I worked with the military for many years. I was in the military for 16 years. And I understand that. But you got to understand this is a civilian company. You can't fire me and displace me because I'm a civilian. Because we have laws, we have rules. you know, and of course you go like, oh, right.
Could hear a pin drop, I think.
And then the thing is like, then what happened? Well, then he said, okay, then you're still gonna continue to manage from the East Coast, and I'm gonna have the West Coast. So the guy came in, and we were trying to develop a relationship. But then later on, I found out that he was making $20,000 more than I do every year, and his bonus system was 2 points higher than me.
Yeah.
Right? So then I didn't know anything about that for a year. So my good friend in HR told me, I go, what do? I didn't sue the company. I did not sue the company. But I was smart enough to hire the best labor lawyer in the country on retainer fee. And then she, in Oregon, she helped me do the paperwork, and we're writing. And at the end of the day, they did. You know, they call him a senior director, and I was a director. I said, why? I have 700 some people, and he only have 400 some people. I have higher revenue requirement. Why am I?
Yeah.
So they adjust everything. So everything at the end of the day, when I retire, it was all adjusted with back pay.
Yeah, because we're still dealing with that. I mean, with women's issues and the equality of pay or discrimination and things like that. I mean, and this was what, in 1980s now or 1990s
This will be, you know, it will be 2000.
Oh, okay, so not that long ago, but it was 23 years ago. We're still, you know, dealing with those issues. But what's really interesting to me is that you really actually stood up and you know, had your say, because it seemed like before you wouldn't have had the confidence or the ability to be able to do that. What?
Well, it's that feeling of the Buddha's teaching, the feeling of injustice. Right?
Yeah.
It's the injustice. Right or wrong, you gotta have right or wrong. It's the feeling of injustice, you know. It cost me my vice presidency, you know. But I think I was very happy that I did that. And it really encouraged me. And I did a lot of coaching, mentoring. I mentor a lot of female engineers, young engineers. And I provide opportunity for them to promote it. And I coach college students. I go to campuses and talk and conferences to talk to women. And, so it helped me quite a bit to do that, because I just felt at the time that injustice that I felt was my calling,
right,
to do my part. And even if it cost me a big promotion,
right,
I think it was worth it, you know?
Yeah, so you mentioned you mentor women in college. What were some of the mentors that you had in your life that really made such a big, huge difference in the way you...
Like I say, I was very, very lucky. I think he was my best mentor. The first time I do the call, I said, Tim, would you be my mentor? You know, at that time they require all the senior VPs to mentor people. So I call up. The book that he gave me was The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And he said, you read this, next time when we meet, we want to talk about this and what are you going to do to implement this. I read the book and I went back, I said, I don't have the guts to do any of this. You're asking me to have cutthroat and I can't do that. He said, do you want to make it or not? I said, I really don't know if I can do that. He said, that's why I'm here. You know, and so it was late in my career, you know, and then of course, you know, because of merger, a lot of my senior vice president that were good, they were all either quit, left, or displaced, you know, and stuff. But so that was one. And of course, when I first came in, I had two VP that hired me. They were my very, very good friend. They watched over me.
Well, they're all male. Your managers
they're
were all male.
With the exception of, you know, I mean, there's a female general manager, you know, but I got to know her a little later. But she was the one who taught me, follow your path. Everything else is noise.
So she's gone through all of that herself. Was she Asian or Caucasian?
She's a Caucasian.
Caucasian.
Yeah. And, you know, my thing, you know, I mean, I would do an assessment, whether or not we want to put this in the air or not, but I would do an assessment, you know, of like the ranking, right? people always say that if you're a person of color, you'll get a priority to get promotion, because it's pretty cutthroat and pretty competitive to compete for promotion, right? Because of bonuses and pays and status and all that stuff, right? But I will say that as women, I think Caucasian women comes first. Second will be Black women. Then will be Hispanic men. Maybe Black man, maybe Hispanic man. Wait a minute, let's start it again. I think it will be Black men, Caucasian women, then will be Hispanic man, Black woman, and a Hispanic woman, then the Asian is always the last. And I think my view, maybe it's not true, but I see that as because of our perceived culture of being a submissive women.
Yeah, it might have to do with the times and what these groups that you mentioned went through too. Because I mean, if I'm talking about the entertainment industry, which is a lot different than corporate, you have the Caucasians who were in films and everything like that, and even they even played Asian people. But then you start having popularity of African Americans or Black people get into the entertainment industry. And now at this time, thank goodness, because the Asians are being more prominent. So I'm just wondering if it has to do with that too. But I feel like at one point, a race in terms of equality was forced on corporations, that they had to hire based on minority. Was that right during your time?
No, there was never any, they have targets.
Okay,
but they never have a number per se. The law does not say thou shalt, but we always have like a target. Target is not a, what do you call it? It's not a requirement, a must.
Okay. Yeah. So corporations themselves put their targets in.
Right. They do that. And you can't, by law, you cannot discriminate against race or sex or.
Right. Supposedly.
None of that. Right. But there were a lot of unspoken rule. But I'm not faulting private industry. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's what life is. No matter where you are, whether it's big corporations or small companies or even in a society, in any organization, that's the way it is. But that's not excuses, at all. But
yeah, I mean, so based on your experience, this is what the ranking that you gave.
My view of it. I might be totally wrong, but that was just my view.
Well, intuition or experience has a lot to do with, how we view and see things.
And it deals with the individual too, how you approach it. I mean, a lot of people would demand, and I've seen that happen too. A lot of people get really angry and they'll go and confront the system and they'll fight it and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really get anywhere, And you can, like they're saying about you can kill them with kindness. Well, that doesn't always work either, but at least it's less stressful, I think. But I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely is culturally oriented, because in the U.S. it's all about the individual. I stand up, you see me, I'm doing this. Yes, we have teams and things like that, but at the end of the day, if I'm standing up and I show that my ability, then usually that person will, So and that's Asia is not that way.
Right, in general. And that just brings to the second, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's where bringing into the contradiction between my two cultures, my Western culture, my Eastern culture. My Eastern culture is everything I do, love deeply, give freely, is all based on the good of the community, the whole.
Yes, the collective.
Not my individual.
Right.
And I think I miss a lot of opportunities because of that philosophy, that whatever I do is I'm doing it for my organization, for the people who I'm working for. It's not me. I can never take credit for what I do, but rather the credit is due to everybody, and I'm doing for the good of everybody.
Yeah.
And of course, in a competitive world, as such, that did not serve me well, I believe. But you never know.
No, I think it's true. I mean, because like I was saying, the Asian cultures generally are very much group-oriented. They don't want to have confrontation. They don't want to have that type of thing. And so it is exactly that. And it was deeply ingrained in you because you were in Asian culture till you were 14. you know, so that, but at least the time you needed to, you stood up and you know, really fought for it.
It was pretty stressful, almost 3 years, you know, all this letter writing back and forth and all those things. But I think I was quite proud of myself. I think that was a big accomplishment, you know, even though I gave up the opportunity. I think I probably had a good shot at being a VP. But but I think I gave up the opportunity, but I think it was for the good, you know, because then I set the precedence for others, you know. And then I think I taught the management a good lessons that you just don't do that, you know. And even though, you know, a lot of work I'm still doing behind the door under the table, but at least, you know, awareness, you know, space and stuff. And I think that I gain a lot of respect from a lot of people as a result of it. So that I'm pretty proud, you know.
So for your coaching, I know you said back to you mentoring college and women professionals. What is like the most basic fundamental things that you try to mentor them or teach them?
Okay, so in terms of coaching work that I've done, you know, as you know, I got the certificate from CTI, you know, it's a coactive training institute. And what we're trying to do is to teach people. And it's, you know, it's almost like, it really reminds me of what I was doing as a therapist. You know, you're trying to get them to think through it themselves, and you try to get them to look at different options, you know, and then kind of look at the pros and cons of what those options are in terms of if they were in a leadership development, we would help them do that. And if it's individual development, it's always about what is it that you want to do for the rest of your life type of thing, you know? So I think it was because of that, you know, I didn't quite want to do that because I burned out as a therapist, and I really didn't want to do that. So when I later part of my thing is I coach them. I had quite a lot of clients in a career development didn't know how to get to the second step to the promotion. And so I would help them to look at the environment where they are at, and then identify who's who and what they do. And then trying to get them to see how they match each one of them. And I encourage them to get a mentor too. I say at least get 2 mentors within the system. And then I taught them how to go and get those mentors.
Because it's much more, the mentorship element of corporations are much more prevalent now, because it is in the corporate guidelines now that they have, right?
But you gotta have a good match. I mean, you gotta have a good mentor, otherwise they're not gonna be able to help you, right? So I try to kind of, so that's what I do when I do career development and leadership development. That's what I try to get them to do. Not so much a therapeutic like what I did before, but more of looking at the environment, look at the corporate structure, get to know who's who and what, and I always focus on what is the mission and the vision of the organization, and then how you fit it. How would you contribute to that? And is that what you really want to do? And then, you know, then they go from there. And I did some for the women's organization. I was sitting on the board for a Women's Center of Women in New York, and I did quite a few coaching sessions for the employees. One of them was horrible. It was a sexual harassment case, and it was bad. And we got through that one. So
did you ever have any of that in your own life in terms of?
Oh my God! When I was young, I was chasing around the office in the military when I was first got in. But you know what? You can't. You know, 1972, I graduated. I did not have any experience. No mentor, no nothing. So I got into office. I was wearing miniskirt, long black hair, like Asian long black hair, no makeup, with a band and cutesy wootsy, you know, going in. I mean, right? I mean, I'm joking about it. I'm laughing about it, you know. But it did not make any excuses for those men trying to touch me, kiss me, hug me, chasing me around the office, trying to look underneath my skirt, you know, like clean on the tables and stuff. But at the end of the day, I laugh at it, and I thought, well, what do you expect? But no excuses, no excuses.
Yeah.
But in 1972, during that period of time, we don't have the Me Too or all this thinking process.
Yeah.
So then after that, I start wearing pantsuits.
Yeah, because you have to make, if you're able to try to make it harder for that other person. So it's based on ourselves also and how we handle these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I'm going to be in an office environment and I'm going to make it wearing a low cut thing, and you don't expect anybody to look at you,
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm a hugger, that's my warmth. I always like, how are you, you know? And later on in my career, I learned I couldn't do that anymore. And to me, it was such a loss. Why couldn't you reach out to people to comfort them if they were in a bad situation? It's not sexual harassment,
right?
But they treat it nowadays as
you have
harassment.
To be on tiptoes around that topic nowadays. Yeah, and yeah. So, if you had any last words for some, a woman, Asian woman, regardless, what would be your advice to somebody that wants to get into a corporate world? And
what I would say, is really exactly that. You have to be clear in terms of what is it that you want to accomplish in a corporation, and what's important to you. Is a promotion, is a certain position of promotions important to you? Is this what you really want to do, or is it just a job? Right? If it's just a job, then don't spend so much energy on doing all this thing. Your energy should be put forward to go and find a job that you really love and you want to do, right? And once you find a job that you really truly want to do and love, then you have to be clear in terms of where your ultimate goal wants to be, right? And be confident. It's what it is, love deeply, give freely, and don't, get bitter about it. And anger is not going to get you anywhere. Just be smart, be confident to know exactly what you want. And then you go after it. That's very important. Secondly, relationships are important, but you got to build it. You got to spend time to build it.
Yeah.
Right? And not to be afraid. So we make mistake and take risk.
Yeah.
What's the worst case?
Yeah.
Right? And don't be so critical of yourself and others, because you got to put yourself in other people's shoes. Why do these people behave the way they are? Because they're threatened by you? Okay, then go find out why are they threatened by you. And so that's how you build relationship. That's what I would tell them to do. Yeah.
Words of wisdom from old Asian lady.
Thank you very much. It may work, it may not work, but try it. Don't be afraid and take risks.
Yeah. You heard it. So thank you, folks, for stopping by today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.